If I were to start off by telling you that Vladimir Tarasenko of the Minnesota Wild scored 4 goals in the last 2 games, you'd think the Montreal Canadiens lost. Well, they didn't. Thanks to some heroics late, once again, by Cole Caufield, and some great play by Demidov and Hudson throughout this hockey game, the Canadiens come away with a 4-3 win in regulation at home versus the Wild. Let's talk some puck. Hey gang, Kosta here from PuckTalk Montreal on this January 20th, 2026. What a glorious day it is as the Montreal Canadiens win in regulation by a score of 4-3 over the Minnesota Wild. The Wild, for their part, came off a huge win last night versus the Toronto Maple Leafs where they dominated the hockey game. They came into Montreal late and they actually gave Montreal a run for their money, which surprised me but didn't surprise me, all things considered. But as we always do, let's take a look at the game highlights. Starting in the first period, about midway through, the Wild get a power play on a penalty given to Phillip Danault. The reason why I mentioned Danault, you'll see in a second. But Tarasenko manages to score his 3rd goal in 2 nights from the wing as the pass comes right across to him and he claps it. There it is, right there. Pass right into the bumper, and he just fires it. Bingo. And it's 1-0 for the Wild. Now, I mentioned Danault a second ago. The reason I did that, because something rather special happened, and I don't know whether the Canadiens caught it or whether they didn't. Well, first things first. Phillip Danault at 15:22 the first scores his first goal of the season, and the fist pump that was due on this one as he looks over at the ref and pumps his fist to say, yes, I scored. There we go. Big hug for Gouli, and it's 1-1. But the trick on this goal was the guy in the crowd who had a red sign that said in French, if Phillip Danault scores, I'm going to marry my girlfriend. #impossible. Well, buddy, I hope the Canadiens caught it. I hope they hold you accountable because, oh my God, your girlfriend better get a ring or you're in so much trouble. Well, further to that, tonight was Alexander Carrier bobblehead night. And what better way to actually celebrate bobblehead night than to have Alex Carrier score another goal, his 5th of the season. He does all the work here. Gets the puck to the wing, Demidov back to the point, and he deflects this puck down, bounces it off the ice into the top corner on a shot by Mike Matheson to make it 2-1 Montreal. And out of the first period, here come the Habs. Everyone's happy. Well, that didn't last long because about midway through the second period, Brock Faber scores on a shot that I can't really tell whether it was tipped in front or not. It looks like it went right through. Faber getting credit for the goal. But watch this as he takes the shot. He looks everybody off and fires a shot towards the net that looks relatively harmless. But here it is again. It just gets through everybody. And it goes in. I don't know who it hit or what it hit. It could have actually hit Dobes and gone in. Who knows? But at the end of the day, it's 2-2 halfway through the hockey game. Well, 2 minutes and 14 seconds later, guess what? Lane Hutson scores on a one-timer on a beautiful fake and feed from Ivan Demidov right here as he gets a pass from Struble, fakes everybody out, no looks it over to Hudson. That makes it 3-2 Montreal going into the 3rd period. Here it is again, bingo. And before I go on to any other highlights, if you remember yesterday's show, I showed you this video. Kind of looks familiar. Same spot. Bingo. That's Hudson ripping a one-timer into the net at practice. So they say practice makes perfect. What better example than that, right? Then came a part of the game that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, where it was referee Eric Furlatt that decided to take over the hockey game. Needless to say, part of that ended up with a 5-on-3 power play versus the Canadiens. And as they killed off the first penalty, the second penalty was still ongoing. And Vladimir Tarasenko ties the hockey game with a second power play goal. He puts this in off of Dobes, who's doing his best to slide across. He puts it in off his midsection and into the net. You'll see it right here a little bit clearer. And that makes it 3-3. And as the game progresses, we all think this is going to overtime. Well, guess what? With 15 seconds left, leave it to the magician. Cole Caufield, the overtime leader in franchise history for the Habs, scores a late one in regulation, clapping it by Wallstat, the goaltender of the Minnesota Wild, to make it 4-3 Montreal. That's all she wrote, and the Habs come away with 2 points and a 4-3 victory. Now, let's get to, before we get to my game report, I created a little special segment for this show, and I call it, very fittingly, Ref, You Suck. Why do I call it Ref, You Suck? Well, because he really, really does. And it doesn't take much to see it. There were 3 penalties in this game that were called, or 2 that were called and 1 that wasn't, that are questionable. Starting with the phantom trip. Or more like Lane Hutson got 2 minutes for Marcus Foligno not being able to skate backwards. It takes a real shitty skater to actually toe pick going backwards. So here's Foligno, tripping over the blue line, literally. Look how far away Hutson is. His stick's not even near him, and Furlatt decides 2 minutes for tripping on Hutson. Then later, at the net front, as there's jousting for position on the puck, Hudson's tied up in front of the net with Sturm, and you saw his stick there for a second. That's what got called as a hook. Then a little bit later, here comes Hartman tripping Dobes, and the referee's right in the corner, and again, no call. Now, the first 2, I'll address in a second, but the Dobes one, I can understand why he didn't call it, because Dobes flailed in the air like somebody shot him. And so when that happens, more often than not, the referee's not going to call it. If he would have done it gracefully and fallen like an actor or a professional wrestler, perhaps, he might have called it. But flailing your hands up in the air as you get tripped, I mean, I've tried to do that, and that never gets called. But let's get to the other 2 penalties. Starting with the easier one of the 2 to figure out, and that is the one in front of the net. I know the stick gets parallel on Sturm. I get it. But here's my problem with that. Sturm's stick is in the same position on Hutson as they try to get to the puck. It's called jockeying for position. It's called jousting for the puck. It's a time-honored tradition at the net front to try to get your stick away from a player's body when you're trying to play the puck, right? You try to move your stick. Oh, I hit the guy. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to move. But you never hook the guy. The guy doesn't move, right? You're not pulling on him. You're not trying to move him out of position. You're simply trying to get your stick down onto the ice. And Hutson gets called for 2 minutes for hooking. That is a shitty call, for lack of a better term. Now we get to the other one. And I know we saw video in the game of Eric Furlatt going over at the beginning of the 3rd period and apologizing to Lane Hutson. I get it. That doesn't change how bad this call was. Okay? And Eric Furlatt is normally a relatively good referee. But this was about as egregious as it gets. And the worst, even what makes this worse, is the fact that the Canadiens were on the power play. So, I mean, like players, like coaches, and like anybody else in hockey, referees do some pre-scouting, right? They need to be familiarized with what teams do. Do they pick players at the blue line on zone entry? I know the answer to that. It's a hard no. Why? Because it's obvious. You're stacking players at the offensive blue line to try to create room for your players to skate in. Obviously, if you touch somebody, you're laying a pick down, right? That happens more often at 5-on-5 when, you don't have as much room on the ice and you're trying to create it, right? Somebody goes in, they pick the guy at the blue line, whatever. Or your forward comes towards the blue line with the puck, trying to keep it onside, and your defenseman just steps up a little bit and interferes with the player. That happens more often. A player backpedaling in on the power play when your team is trying to come across the blue line, it never happens. If it does, it's incidental contact. Even then, you don't call it. But this, Hutson was literally 2 feet away from Foligno. I don't care how blind referees are. The years of Tim Peel are gone. The Chris Lees of the world are still around, although we haven't seen him that often in Montreal this year, thank God. But this was about as egregious a call as I've ever seen. And This type of call, along with what happened on Saturday in the game versus Ottawa, where Tim Stützle took 3 strides and then decided to fall and still got a tripping penalty called for him, they're about as egregious as they come. And it feeds into the whole thought process that the league is against Canadian teams, especially the Montreal Canadiens. I don't buy into that. I don't think that's the case. I think these are on individual bases, and, human beings can make mistakes, right? But I mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again. There should be a mechanism in place, right, where a referee who's not sure of his call can actually review it himself and allow him the chance to correct the mistake that he may have made, right? When it's that bad, and it's that clear, I mean, you can overturn it right away. Now, the rule is in place that you can actually review a penalty if you call a double minor or a major. Then you can review. And then if you call it, you can either say it's a 2-minute instead, or you could simply wipe the penalty out altogether because it's not a penalty. Say another player's stick from the same team hits a guy in the face. It's happened before. Why doesn't the league allow the referees to fix this crap, right? It happens. They're human. It happens in baseball. They stop the play, they review it, and they fix it. Referee doesn't take it personally because, yes, he's made the mistake and he wants the right call to be made. If this was any other game, say this was a divisional game against somebody like the Tampa Bay Lightning, Detroit, or even Buffalo coming up this Thursday, you'd want them to get it right, wouldn't you? And if they didn't get it right, you want them to correct it. Screw the makeup call later. Fix it now. Especially given the fact that the Canadiens were on the power play. Well, it doesn't happen. The league doesn't have that rule in place. And so, screw it. We yell at the refs. At the end of the day, it's a mistake. It didn't really cost the Canadiens all that much, although because of the 5-on-3 in the third period, Tarasenko did score on the power play to tie up the hockey game as the Canadiens were scrambling after the first penalty was done. So, I digress. I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what you want to put in the comments. Personally, we won the hockey game. I'm moving on. But I think the referees need to be a little bit more accountable. And you know what? If you make a mistake in a hockey game, step up to the mic. Don't apologize to the player, right? Like Jim Joyce did when he screwed up Galarraga's no-hitter with Detroit, right? Step up to the mic, say it. I screwed that kid out of a no-hitter. It's on me. Take responsibility. Now that we've taken care of screaming at the zebras, time for us to talk about our game report. And there's a lot of good things to look at this game report, right? Starting with the fact that the Montreal Canadiens actually outshot their opponent and got a huge amount of shots in the first period. Now, whether or not that's because the Wild didn't have their legs or whatever excuse you want to use, the fact that the Montreal Canadiens got, I think it was 15 shots in the first period is a big plus. Normally, they get upwards of 20, 22 in games recently. So the fact that they worked on shooting in practice yesterday and that translated to what we saw today, that's great. And you heard it during the TSN broadcast. Mike Johnson, Brian Mudryk, the guys that call it in English. You probably heard it on RDS as well if you prefer to listen to RDS. Guys are clamoring to shoot the puck, whether it's Lane Hudson, whether it's Demidov. And you see that they're looking for that perfect shot, right? Demidov, despite the fact he made that low look pass over to Hudson, it was the perfect shot because the net was open at that point. The same holds true for Hudson on the power play. He still refuses to shoot the puck at the net. You saw what happened with the Matheson goal. Carrier doing a flyby, tipping the puck, it going into the top corner. That's what you're looking for against teams like Minnesota. And you're not going to have that happen if you hold on to the puck and you don't shoot it. So kudos on the Canadiens for doing the right thing in this game and peppering Wallstat with 33 shots. That said, another thing you got to give a lot of credit to the Montreal Canadiens for is having traffic in front of the net. All game long, you rarely saw shots without somebody in front of the net, whether it was Veleno, Dano, who scored on a rebound from right in front, Carrier, who deflected a shot from Matheson as he was doing a flyby to go to the net. He had the wherewithal to delay his return to the point as the shot came in, and managed to get a stick on it. None too shabby for a guy we've been yelling at all season long for the mistakes he's made. Got to give him props when he does something right. And then Kirby Dach, who we saw back for the first time in almost 2 months, he was still going to the front of the net despite the fact that he came back from a broken foot from blocking 2 shots. And he still continued to do exactly what he was doing at the start of the season, getting in front of the net, using his body to shield the goaltender's eyes from the puck, and creating second chance rebound opportunities. It was beautiful. Although the referees did blow down a couple of early whistles there when the pucks were still loose, needless to say, Montreal did exactly what they needed to do to get the best of the Minnesota Wild in this hockey game. But again, you talk about the Wild and you say, wait a minute, Vladimir Tarasenko still scored 2 goals. We said to watch him. Yes. But when you look at Tarasenko, right, he's only got, 13 goals on the season? Is that where? Yeah. He's only got 13 goals on the season. 4 in his last 2 games. So prior to the Toronto game, he had 9 goals on the season. That's not typical Vladimir Tarasenko. So although he did score 2 versus Toronto, you can't really base your coverages on a single hockey game. Not to mention that both his goals were scored on the power play. So, you're not going to put too much credence in that other than the fact that you're going to say Montreal needed to be much more disciplined. And we mentioned that early in yesterday's preview show, right? While the power play that the Wild runs isn't necessarily always good, it's streaky. And in the last 2 games, it's been streaky. So, it is what it is, right? Tarasenko with another couple of goals. But on the bright side, you take a look at the other guys in the lineup that could put the puck in the net, like Kirill Kaprizov. The Canadiens did a relatively good job stopping him. That brings us to Jakub Dobes, who I'm a little worried about. Despite the fact that he only allowed 3 shots on, 3 goals, on 19 shots. Not great as far as shot output by the Wild or save percentage for Dobes. He was flailing a little bit in net, losing his net, making crazy saves at certain points, right? And that worries me because that's not how he started his season. And again, I keep mentioning this, and I may be wrong, right? But the fact that Eric Raymond continues to work with these guys, it worries me, right? Quite a bit. And needless to say, between now and the Olympic break, we may not see another breakdown from the goaltenders, but one thing's for certain. You know that these guys are going to work on their game when the Olympics are going on, and you know that a lot of that work is going to be done with Eric Raymond. That scares me a little bit because right now, Dobes is just doing all the wrong things in net. He's too busy. He's got to settle himself down, right? He's got happy feet. He's still got good position. He's still at the top of his crease. He plays a very large butterfly, so he takes up a lot of space. So that's fine. But the minute the puck hits him and he gets rebounds, that's when he starts to panic a little bit. Further to that, during the second period, I noticed one thing that really concerned me. The Wild were getting a lot of screenshots in the second period, and I noticed that Dobes was having a lot of trouble tracking shots. Now, part of the reason for that is the fact that the Canadiens weren't boxing out the forwards from the Minnesota Wild. Instead, they were trying to front the puck, trying to block it, and creating a secondary screen on their own goaltender. That gave him fits in the second period. In the third, it wasn't as bad, but he still had trouble certain times tracking the puck. And the easiest way to spot that is to watch the goaltender closely. And when the puck goes by him and he doesn't see it and it hits the boards and he reacts then, that's when you know he's having trouble tracking the puck. I noticed it on 5 different occasions when it came to Dobes, especially in the middle part of that second frame. So there's some work to be done there. And so I hope that Eric Raymond can recognize this and work on it with him. Because if a goaltender can't track the puck, we saw this with Montembeault at the beginning of the season. He was having trouble tracking pucks. So it's not as if I'm talking about something that hasn't been a problem with the Canadiens previously. It was happening with Montembeault. What did he do? He went down to the American Hockey League. He worked with Marco Marciano. And lo and behold, what happened? Well, his game got back. Then he came back up, and he's still playing relatively well, but we're starting to see little things starting to leak into his game again, which weren't there when he came back from the American Hockey League. The same for Dobes. He started the season just fine. And now he looks more nervous. He doesn't have the same poise that he did, and he's having trouble tracking the puck. I'm just saying, it's something to watch. Because in this hockey game, it didn't hurt Montreal, but against Buffalo, it may very well be a different story, especially, given the fact that Montembeault doesn't play with as large a butterfly as Dobes does. Now let's throw a few flowers to a few players in this game who are really freaking good, starting with Ivan Demidov. He was spectacular in this hockey game, not only in his own zone, but offensively. Another 2-point night for him, a couple of assists, one on the goal by Carrier, and one on the goal by Lane Hutson, where he fed him for the one-timer. His vision is crazy good. If only he could find himself opportunities to shoot the puck more. That's what we want from him, right? But if he continues to produce points, this may very well be the first time that the NHL has seen back-to-back Calder winners since Bobby Orr and Derek Sanderson did it for the Boston Bruins way back when. So an interesting situation, right? Of course, you know that Matthew Schaefer is going to have a lot to say about that. But, if he continues to just produce points, it's going to be an obvious choice to have him win Rookie of the Year and cost the Canadiens more money when they try to re-sign him after that. You also got to give a lot of credit to Lane Hutson. Tough hockey game for him, especially the other night. And he was out there tonight and played extremely well, contributing on the offense, making good decisions with the puck, not giving up the puck all that often. You know he's going to. When you have a player that pushes the offense as much as he does, he's going to give up the puck, just like Quinn Hughes does for the Minnesota Wild. But you live and die with those mistakes, right? And more often than not, he holds himself accountable and he gets back in coverage. So you can't really blame him all that much. But offensively tonight, he was another guy who was a catalyst. And what's there to say about Alex Carrier? I mean, for all the crap that we threw at him earlier in the season when he was making mistakes defensively, we're starting to see a little bit more balance in his game. He's not making stupid pinches. He's staying in his zone. He's biding his time when he goes up the ice to make plays now, as opposed to pushing the pace a little bit too much. Interestingly enough, I just want to look at his ice time, but Carrier was at 18:01, which is where he normally was when he was playing regular minutes. Now that Caden Gooley's back, Gooley had 19:31, so it's starting to balance out a little bit, right? And obviously, Dobson and Matheson get the brunt of the time, along with Hutson. Where was Hutson here in today's game? He was at 19:29. It was Matheson at 23:40 and Dobson at 24 that led the way for the Canadiens, which is fine by me because those two guys together cover a lot of ice. They're physical when they need to be, and they continue to contribute offensively. I got no issue. I do have an issue, though, with something that's come up among the fan base, and that is people that are bashing Mike Matheson. And I don't know why that's happening, okay? He's nowhere near as bad giving away the puck as he was last season. The same can be said for Noah Dobson as well. Much more responsible with the puck. Is he perfect? Nobody is. But when you take a look at Matheson's game overall, you like Hutson, like Dobson, like everybody else, you take the good with the bad, right? And there's a lot more good than bad when it comes to Matheson. It's been extremely rare for him to give up the puck where it creates an odd-match situation going the other way, as opposed to what was happening last year where he was giving away the puck like my sister gives away rocks at Halloween. So it's just what it is, right? Matheson is another guy who sometimes takes risks, but you live and die with those risks because those risks outweigh the cons when it comes to the way he plays the game. So give him a break. If you're going to allow Hutson to do it, you got to allow Matheson to do it. If everybody was doing it, okay, start yelling and screaming. But Matheson, number one, doesn't give away the puck nearly as much as Hutson does, and the only reason people are yelling is because Matheson doesn't put up as many points as Hutson does. But if he did that, then he'd be giving away the puck more often, and then people would have a reason to yell. You hear where I'm going with this? It's been an interesting stretch for Montreal, I think. right? When you take a look at how they've been over the last little while, anyway, as we take a look back momentarily, you have back-to-back losses versus the Capitals and the Buffalo Sabres, but they've won 3 out of their last 5. And that's not a bad stretch, especially given the fact that they've had back-to-backs and so on. From now to the Olympic break, they don't have any back-to-backs. So, at least I don't think they do. No, they don't. So, until February, I believe it's 4th, right, where they have their last game? Yeah, February 4th is the last NHL game before the Olympic break starts. So, for the next, say, 2.5 weeks, the Montreal Canadiens are playing every other day, except for Sundays where, you know what, they can actually get a day off and rest a little bit, which is something they just haven't gotten. And so there's a lot of good stuff coming up here for Montreal. They're going to be able to rest between games, practice on things that they may very well need to work on, whether it's with individual players or with units as a whole. They can decide to have optional practices, or they can decide to have the whole team on the ice where they're going over different plays as opposed to individual tactics like they did on Monday. There's a variance. This is a window for Marty St. Louis to do some real work with Montreal in preparation for the home stretch of the season, the last 25 after the Olympic break. So the Canadiens are in pretty good shape. They play Buffalo twice in the next 2 weeks. Those are big games. They also play against the Bruins this coming Saturday. So the fact that the Canadiens can rest in between games, and as you see with the Wild, who were at the tail end of a back-to-back, the Canadiens are going to be able to benefit from the fact that they have the ability to rest between games, especially against some of their divisional opponents. So it's a great place to be for Montreal. Let's take a quick look at the standings. As Montreal sits 1 point behind Detroit and 3 points behind the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Atlantic Division, it's a great place to be. And right now, I don't think the Canadiens need to worry all that much. They've got a 4-point buffer on Buffalo. That 4-point game coming up Thursday is going to be huge, and we'll preview that game in tomorrow night's show. But needless to say, everything that's gone on recently for Montreal, whether it's the goal scoring. One thing I didn't mention in my game report is the fact that we got secondary scoring tonight. Carrier and Danault. Who can complain, right? You got scoring from your top guys, Hudson and Caufield. You had good defense. Your goaltending was okay. Not too shabby for a team that a lot of people didn't think was going to be anywhere near the top of the division, with the exclusion of one guy, me. I called it early on. I thought Toronto would digress because of the fact they lost Mitch Marner. Guess what? A little bit right about that, wasn't I? Despite what Austin Matthews thinks. One final thing before we go, and it's something I think all of us need to take a step back on, and that is when players take leave of absences, right? It's fine to speculate, but to start spreading rumors and innuendo when a player is just taking time off because he's got mental health issues, that's Bush League. If you're doing it for clickbait, don't. Be a better person than that, okay? There are a lot of people out there that like to throw shit at the wall and see if it sticks so that, they can claim that, I was the first one to say it. The other day when Rasmus Andersson got traded to the Vegas Golden Knights, everybody was saying that Marco D'Amico called that. Well, let me tell you something about that particular thing. Elliot Friedman called the fact that Rasmus Andersson was being traded at the end of last season, just before the trade deadline. Everybody's been talking about him moving. It's not a secret. So, stop trying to give people credit for, yes, you can report on it, and that's fine. And yes, you can find out information about it. That's fine. But to take credit for something that's been happening over the last 18 months, I'm sorry, no. And that goes for this mental health issue, right? I watched the video today of Linus Ullmark talking and about what happened to him. And the fact that people were going online calling him a home wrecker. And, until you get some kind of proof and you're not listening to rumors and innuendo, don't say things like that. He's got a wife and kids, and who's the homewrecker if he's done nothing? It's the asshole who puts it online. That's who the homewrecker is afterwards, right? And it's part and parcel of what's wrong with social media these days, right? It's why I don't deal with rumors all that much on this show. I try to be different. I try to be honest. Why? Because we know how hurtful people can be on social media, right? The keyboard warriors, the guys get hide behind the fact that they could sit there, and bash people. Let's cut that out. Especially when it comes to celebrities and professional hockey players. They're in the limelight all the time. And so, they're more prone to getting criticized or spoken about or whatever. It's happened to me where I've gone online and said something on X, this was a few years ago, and somebody decided to contradict me and make fun of me. Well, let me tell you what happened when we met for the first time face to face. And he turned green and went into the corner and started crying to mommy. I shook his hand and turned around and said, not so loud now, but right, how about I take a keyboard and clap you over the head with it? It is very, very simple. And it's the same thing for everybody. Think about it from your perspective, right? You're a family man or a family lady, for lack of a better term. You've got kids, and somebody starts running their mouths about how you're having an affair. How would you like it if it's not true? If it's true, yeah, screw you. But if it's true, as an example, how would you feel? How would your spouse feel? How would your kid feel if they saw that on social media? All those things have to take into account. You're not just hurting one person. You're not hurting Linus Ullmark only. You're hurting his wife. You're hurting his kids. So when it comes to personal stuff, unless you know for sure, unless you've heard it from the person themselves, or unless the organization has come out and said something about it, slow down. A scoop is not that important. And throwing shit at the wall to see if it sticks based on what you think might have happened, don't. All right? Be the better person. Life will be a better place for you. See you on Wednesday night, tomorrow, as we preview the game between the Buffalo Sabres and the Montreal Canadiens at the Bell Center. A huge 4-point game with huge divisional ramifications for the Habs and Buffalo. We'll preview that, and we'll talk a little bit more. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, spread the word, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you tomorrow night.